Hello, Jeff Zwarenk, and welcome again to Give and Take, the segment of our show where we explore important scientific ideas and how they point to the creator of the universe. Today, we're joined by Hugh Ross, and we're going to discuss the powerful explosions that end stars' lives and how those are important to life here on Earth. Hugh, good to have you here today.
Well, thank you.
So there are these stars, Hugh, as you well know, that they burn through their fuel, and at the end of their lives, they just explode in catastrophic explosions. Why are these catastrophic explosions important for life here on Earth?
Well, you're referring to supernovae, and supernovae are stars that when they end their cycle, they have this massive explosion where they convert elements into elements heavier than iron. And those heavier than iron elements are essential for life. There's a bunch of them in your body that would, if you didn't have them, you would die. And then there's another event where you get two neutron stars merging together to make a kilonovae. About half the elements that are heavier than iron predominantly come from these kilonovae. So we need both kinds of events happening in order to have the elements that we need to live and also the resources we need for civilization.
So, kind of describe, you mentioned twice that you're talking about elements heavier than iron. What is it about iron that makes it the turning point in these element productions?
Well, stars like the sun are fusing light elements to make heavy elements, and that works until you get iron. But if you want to make elements heavier than iron, you got to put energy in to transform these lighter than iron elements into heavier than iron elements. That's why you need a really super explosion to have the energy source that's sufficiently intense to transform these lighter than iron into heavier than iron elements.
So if I get what you're saying, below iron, as elements are fused together, they actually produce energy and
Correct.
will power a star, if you will. But when you get above iron, something has it that reaction actually requires energy. So you need something very energetic to provide the energy to drive the reaction. That's what you're
That-
basically saying,
That's
correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay. So what are some of these other elements that are heavier than iron that are important?
Well, things like copper and zinc, we all know we need copper and zinc to maintain health. But things like cobalt, my favorite is arsenic. If you don't have arsenic in your diet, you will die. But obviously, if you consume too much arsenic, that's also bad for you. We call these vital poisons. Consuming too much zinc will kill you. Consuming not enough will kill you. And that's one wonderful thing about planet Earth. We live in a planet where all these vital poisons, and there's 22 of them in the periodic table that must be at just right levels so that we can actually live and thrive.
So we've got these elements that are heavier than iron, that are vital poisons. You kind of, if you could take one or two of these maybe and describe what are some of the consequences of having too little or too much. Because you refer to them as vital poisons, which if you don't have enough, you're poisoned. If you got too much, you're poisoned. Kind of describe some of the consequences for one of those, if you could.
While there's several life essential proteins that are built on arsenic, and so
Mm.
you need arsenic in your diet, otherwise you're going to be missing those proteins and you literally will die. But arsenic in high quantities is toxic. What winds up happening is you begin developing other proteins that are detrimental to you. And so we've all read these novels where some lady doesn't like her husband, so she throws a little bit of extra arsenic into his dinner, and after a few days, he winds up passing away. So that's an example of a vital poison. And by the way, you do not need to take arsenic supplements. There's plenty of arsenic just in the food and vegetables you eat that you'll be fine.
I think you may read different novels than I do, Hugh, but okay. So the supernova and these kilonova are important for producing these heavier than iron elements because they're vital for actually the functioning of life and particularly human life here on Earth. Are there any other heavier than iron elements that are important for life on Earth, not just in dietary requirements, but some other function?
Well, gold is an obvious example. We don't need gold in our diet, but everybody wants to have lots of gold because it's a product that is very useful for industrial purposes, has high value. I think what's most significant for planet Earth is the fact that we live on a planet that's super endowed with uranium and thorium, and those only can come from supernova and kilonova. And that uranium and thorium is crucial to provide enough eternal heat from the interior of the Earth to drive plate tectonics and to establish our magnetic field that protects us from deadly solar and cosmic radiation.
So kind of dig into the details or give us a little bit of the details because you think uranium and thorium, and most likely you're thinking poisoning from radioactivity or building a bomb out of them. How do uranium and thorium play into making Earth habitable? Give us a few more details there.
Well, Earth is super endowed with both uranium and thorium. Because of that, the uh, ferrous metals, the cobalt, nickel, and iron in Earth's interior, you actually get it hot enough where it becomes liquid outside of the solid core. And it's that liquid core of magnetic metals that actually establishes a dynamo which produces the magnetic field. And that magnetic field serves two purposes. It stops solar radiation from sputtering away our atmosphere that we need to breathe. And secondarily, it actually shields us from being bombarded by deadly solar radiation and deadly cosmic radiation. And what's wonderful, we have enough uranium and thorium that magnetic field has been stable for over 3 billion years.
And so presumably the uranium and the thorium, as they're decaying, they're providing the heat that
Correct.
allows all of this to go on in the interior of the Earth.
Right. And they're long lived, so they can produce this heat for a long period of time.
So that's very fascinating, Hugh. What other things when you're looking at supernova and kilonovae just stand out to you as fascinating in these explosions that God has made so predominant throughout the universe?
Well, I'm amazed. I mean, as you are well aware, that kilonovae were only recently discovered when we saw two neutron stars merging together. And what really was fascinating to me is how many astronomers jumped onto that one event that took place. And we learned everything about kilonovae just from this one event. And all those telescopes focused on the event basically showed us how much of these elements heavier than iron crucially depend on Earth early in its history being close to a neutron merging event. Now, obviously, if we're too close, that's bad news. We get wiped out by the merging event, but if we're not close enough, we don't get sufficiently endowed with these crucial heavy elements.
Thank you very much, Hugh. I appreciate your comments today. It is just fascinating as we look out in this universe. There's a lot of things that happen that just appear very detrimental or damaging or dangerous. Who would think that a star exploding catastrophically at the end of its life, something that could wipe out life on a planet, is actually critical for advanced life on a planet? It seems like God has orchestrated things so that these dangerous, outstanding, spectacular events are instrumental in how he's prepared a place where we can live so comfortably. I'd encourage you to go to reasons.org. Hugh's written a lot about these sort of things, but particularly check out his latest article on why supernovae and kilonovae are essential for advanced life. It will give you great tools to go out and share this phenomenal, awesome universe and how it points to the God who created it so that we can know him better.